Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here at the UCISA conference. I'm Leo Appleton. I work at Goldsmiths, University of London, and I have to say I've never been to a UCISA conference of any descript before, so UCISA and the Digital Capabilities Conference is quite new to me, and I'm really, really pleased to be here. Digital and digital literacy and digital capabilities has always been something I've been interested in, but in all honesty, as a librarian, I regarded UCISA and UCISA conferences as somebody else's conference, so that's why I feel really welcome here, and it's so nice to see people from different professional services. We have IT professionals, IT support staff, directors of IT services, learning technologists, and of course a smattering of librarians and library and information professionals at the conference. I fall into that latter group. I am a librarian, but I'm going to talk to you today, or what I've been asked to talk to you today about, is the role of libraries and the librarian in supporting digital citizenship. So I'm going to I really want to place digital literacy and digital capability into its parent paradigm, that of digital citizenship. And I'm going to unpick the role of the library in that and different elements of digital citizenship. And when I say library, I'm talking about any library. I'm not talking about academic libraries necessarily today. I am going to put that into a wider library sector. This presentation isn't grounded in any research or investigation or evaluation or experimentation. It's simply me piecing together what I've learnt, what I've observed about libraries and how they work with people, how they work with citizens, and how they support them. So I hope you will indulge me as I go through my slides. So I've been thinking about digital citizenship and what that means exactly to be a citizen in the 21st century. How do we survive and further develop as citizens in a world which is becoming more and more technologically dependent, and much of our daily life is carried out in a digital way, or relies on understanding digital concepts, digital transactions? So simple things like withdrawing money from the bank, booking a hotel room, arranging travel, applying for and claiming universal credit and benefits, doing your tax return, arranging insurance, renewing membership. It all relies on an amount of digital savviness, digital capability. On top of that, it also relies on having access to computers, access to IT in order to carry these out. There are, of course, always non-digital options or alternatives available for those who cannot access the digital landscape, but these really are the exception rather than the rule nowadays, in much the same way that for library and information professionals, supporting digital and access to electronic resource and digital resource is far more normal now than supporting access to print and access to artifacts. So, okay. Hopefully you get the print and the digital thing from a library perspective. But what about this bigger citizenship thing that I'm talking about? So I'll try to explain what I mean by citizenship and digital citizenship. But you probably want to hear a little bit more about my library credentials and why I'm in a position maybe to talk about how libraries support this vast concept of digital citizenship. I have worked for over 20 years in academic libraries, exclusively academic libraries, in a library management position. I've worked in 7 different universities, so I have kind of have a breadth of experience across different types of university. I'm also very active in CILIP, Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals, and I've chaired their special interest group, Multimedia Information and Technology, for about 5 years. I was secretary for 5 years prior. I've just stood down from that position to edit their journal, Multimedia and Information Technology. The reason I explain that is it kind of puts me in touch with people and puts me in touch with library tech and kind of library digital activity. And in addition, I'm also a research student doing a PhD at Edinburgh Napier University, and I'm doing my research into the impact of public libraries on citizenship in general. And that's really allowed me to explore and navigate and find out lots about the public library sector, for me to compare and contrast with the academic library sector. And it's really fascinating. But again, puts me in touch with people to talk about citizenship and how the library impacts on their citizenship. And digital will always come up. So, having worked in academic libraries, I've seen obviously a clear shift from digital to print, and now studying public libraries, you can see where, again, the shift is more and more to supporting digital activity and digital citizenship. we've become reliant as a sector on technology, and become reliant on technology for learning to occur, and research to occur, and teaching to occur within our academic environments. For example, a massive move in further education in the 1990s and the 2000s, so fairly recently still, was to digitise all learning materials. That largely meant digitising course books, workbooks, finding resources online. Not particularly revolutionary, but it did mean that students needed an element of what we then called computer literacy. Nowadays, we take it for granted that a student knows their way around a web page, knows how to click on links and access resources. But we can transfer that kind of behaviour to how students use VLEs, how students interact with social media, and how we can incorporate that in teaching and learning. But for me, that's where we've made this transition. We now talk about digital literacy and digital capability. Does it all really stem from needing to access a particular type of information for your learning, teaching or research to occur? Are we providing information, allowing students, allowing people to manipulate that information, contribute to that information, and our job is to provide them with the skills and the knowledge to be able to access that digital platform, i.e. using Facebook or even filling in a tax return. So for me, this access to information, what you do with information, how you manipulate and use information, sits really neatly with library and information professionals. And I think that the word information is key in this example. Library and information science is a fascinating area to work in, and certainly a fascinating area to be a research student in. There's never been so much rapid and fast-moving change in an area, in a discipline, as there is in library and information science, and indeed computer science. When I was training to be a librarian in the mid-1990s, it's not that long ago, 25 years ago, we were still being taught to catalogue and classify print books. We were being taught how to use card indexes, how to use paper, abstracting and indexing systems. The digital versions of those were only just being kind of created, if you like. So that really illustrates the revolution that's taken place within library and information science, and online information now is common. It's so common. 90% of the world's data, you're probably familiar with this statistic, at any one time these days, has been produced within the last 2 years. Every day, 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created. That's 25 with 15 zeros after it. The point is, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of data, and there's a lot of technology. And people need help to navigate this data and this information. And for me, that's where the librarian comes in. We've always helped people with information. We've always helped people find it and use it and critique it. So for me, the citizenry needs librarians and needs libraries. But that brings me on to, well, actually, what's he talking about? What is citizenship? And I think basically citizenship is having the knowledge and the skills and the confidence to be able to use the data and the information in whatever form it comes. Those 2.5 quintillion bytes of data generated each day, being able to use that in order to participate in your society. And for me, that's what citizenship is, playing an active part in society. There's so many elements to citizenship in general. Communications, finding employment, having somewhere to live, finance, shopping, commerce, travel, registering to vote, voting, being a participant in democratic society. And that's not to mention teaching and learning. That's an element of being a citizen. So there's so many elements of being a citizen. Where do you go for help? Where do citizens go for help? Where do people go for help and support to be a citizen in the society that they live in? I want to move us into digital citizenship as part of this presentation, because that's what we are here for, to learn about, to discuss, debate digital literacy and digital competencies. This list is a list of elements I present to librarians when talking about how do we support people, how do we support digital citizenship. And this essentially is what I'll be talking about now for the next few minutes about digital citizenship. Digital access, that's full and equal access to be able to participate in the activity in your society, whether it's a teaching and learning environment, a civic environment, a school environment. Digital commerce, so the transaction of buying and trading and selling and acquiring goods and services online. Digital communication, the use of electronic and social media for the exchange of information. Digital literacy, the one I think we're all pretty comfortable with, the pedagogy of technology and the use of technology in all aspects of life. Digital profiles and reputation, i.e. your online presence, standards of conduct online, etiquette, netiquette. Digital law, responsibilities for action, understanding what is deemed legal and illegal in a digital environment. Digital rights, responsible approaches to the freedom afforded to all in a digital world. Digital well-being, physical and psychological health with regard to the use of technology and digital activity. Digital security, understanding how to protect yourself in an online environment. And your digital footprint, what happens to your data, what happens to your information and your personal information. So you could argue, is that not all actually just digital literacy, digital capability, what we're all talking about? And then you could ask, can libraries really be involved in all of the above? I'm just going to focus a little bit on digital literacy, again, because I think that's the common interest amongst everybody in the room. And here are some sample definitions of digital literacy. For me, the top right one, from the European Commission, browsing, searching, filtering data, information and digital content, evaluating data, information and digital content, managing data, information and digital content, sits neatly with me as a librarian. I think that's what we do. That's what we help people with. Predominantly, that's a default position, and certainly is the case with academic libraries. The bottom right one, being good with computers, a quote from Ian Baird. Ian Baird is a colleague of mine in University of Teesside, or Teesside University. He's an academic librarian, and I asked him to write a piece about his involvement in digital literacy. And as a librarian, he said he was picked on to become the digital champion, the digital literacy champion, because he was seen as being good with computers. And I thought to myself, it's quite flippant, but I understand where he was coming from. It's a starting point of being able to understand your way around a computer, and moving on to how you support your students in your particular discipline. I'll pick up on Ian's quote a little later on, but I just thought I'd share these definitions with you. And really, I beg the question, are libraries really only concerned with digital literacy? Or when we talk about digital literacy, is it perhaps what we're doing is talking about digital citizenship? I'm now going to share the current practice I was talking about. So my presentation is not grounded in any research or evaluation. It really is grounded in real life, what libraries are doing in the various sectors. So I'm very fortunate. I've been exposed to lots and lots of public libraries over the last few years. And digital citizenship, how you support it, does differ from sector to sector. There are different initiatives in particular sectors. But ultimately, digital citizenship for the respective groups and constituents of any library group is what libraries need to concern themselves with. So, for example, many public libraries are actively engaged in hosting and facilitating job clubs. The citizens who use public libraries, people who are unemployed and claiming universal credit, go to the library to fill those forms in, to access the computers, to be able to get their universal credit. So job clubs is a natural extension of that. Members of the public can search for jobs online, are supported in their applications, supported in creating CVs. Public libraries present coding clubs, grid clubs, Google garages. All of these activities, for me, take information literacy provision, digital literacy provision, within the library to another level. It's here where we might start to talk about digital literacy rather than information literacy. But for me, they're all variations on the theme. Information seeking, information management, and how you use information. Again, the work of the library. And what they're offering here is the support required to survive in a digital world. Support required to be able to participate, to be able to claim your benefits, to be able to find a job, to be able to educate yourself. The library is doing all of that and being very responsive in this digital environment. So sticking with public libraries, by the way, I might point out there is no national public library service. We have 151 library authorities, all of whom have an autonomy within their library authority to deliver services as they see fit and as they can afford. So there might be a disparity in offer between different public libraries, but essentially the public libraries are for the public good, to support their citizens, their constituents, the people who use them, in accessing that information, making use of that information, participating in society. But there are a few other drivers. There's a national curriculum in England that requires pupils to leave school digitally literate. There's a national digital strategy created by our government for libraries to implement. There's a big e-safety driver, e-safety initiative. There are digital champions projects in public libraries, and there is a drive to support small business startups as well. So the 151 library authorities can do a lot of this. Again, as I said, it differs from authority to authority, and now I believe only 93% of public libraries have internet access, which means that 7% of public libraries don't have internet access, which makes supporting the digital very difficult. Having said that, it's not uncommon in a public library to find access to PCs, access to computers. The more progressive public libraries will have higher tech facilities, 3D printers. Central Library in Leeds has a wonderful music studio and sound editing facilities. Manchester Public Library has a fantastic music department with lots of access to electronic music, electronic musical instruments, etc. So quite progressive in supporting digital activity and supporting participation in that digital environment. And people still go to public libraries, and that's really important because that's why digital citizenship is part of what libraries do. I've got some stats around 2015-16, 177 million book loans in England's public libraries, 211 million visits to public libraries in England during that year, which is more visits than there were to Premier League football matches. The irony there, I think, is 211 million visits, and local authorities are still trying to cut costs and close libraries down. We don't see the same, anyone trying to close Chelsea down or Tottenham Hotspur or the likes. So I think they are popular. People go there, and it's a place people go to for help. And of course, it's not just the public library. We can take that into our own academic library environment as well. But before I do, and I will do that in just a moment, again, just to highlight some of the good practices going on in our public libraries to support digital activity, to support digital citizenship. Some of the things I've mentioned already: job clubs, assistance in applying for universal credit, coding clubs, grid clubs, homework clubs, fix-it cafes, Arduino workshops. It's all there. It's all there, being provided for by our public libraries. There's some really good examples of this kind of activity. Newcastle Public Library stands out as offering all of the above. A really good example of Rochdale, the local authority there, does an annual digital festival for the residents and citizens of Rochdale. It's led and it's driven by the public library. It's a digital festival. It brings local businesses together, community groups, and the library organises and the library staff the digital help desk during the course of this festival, introducing people to digital activities, managing health online, accessing e-books, accessing council services online, how to use email, how to use Skype, how to use social media, all there in the digital festival. And for me, that really resonates. That's what public libraries are offering to the people who use them. There's also a body, I don't know whether anybody's heard of the Good Things Foundation. I won't dwell on this too much. This is a really helpful organisation, really helps public libraries in deliver that digital citizenship work. It used to be called the Tinder Foundation. It's a Quango, but it's set up really to create a world where everyone benefits from digital. That is its strapline. Those headings, poverty, digital inclusion, etc., that you can all read there, are the key, I suppose, operating statements on the Good Things Foundation webpage. They are essentially a Quango set up to deal with digital exclusion, and that's what they are tackling. And they want to build the digital capabilities of library to be able to offer opportunities and solutions around digital exclusion. Worth looking up the Good Things Foundation if you're unfamiliar with them, certainly if you're working with digital and with technology. What the Good Things Foundation does do, where we have 151 different library authorities, it does allow some consistency in the provision in that tackling digital exclusion. They do this through the online centres network, where online centres are part of the public library services, so there's a consistency there, and the Learn My Way, which is the system for some of the teaching and learning that happens in public libraries. Just going to briefly mention health and medical libraries as a different type of sector. I suppose for health and medical libraries you could replace that with law libraries, business libraries, special libraries, commercial libraries. There's a whole raft of different smaller sectors. Health and medical is a fairly big sector. All NHS trusts have some kind of library and information provision, both clinician facing and patient facing. And what's fascinating now when I've spoken to health librarians is their take on digital capability. For me, digital citizenship is slightly different. Their constituents, or their citizens, require different support and different types of information. So clinicians do require evidence-based practice, access to medical journals, access to health and social care journals, so that they can actually practice from research. But you flip that over, health and medical libraries also offer services to patients and to the general citizens who are making use of health services. That's all of us. So things like advice and support in how to get your online prescription, for example, how to book appointments with nurses, with the doctor, how to access health services online. So again, quite, it's support that the people need and they go to their library for. It happens to be a health or a medical library. And then I come on to the area that we're all familiar with, the academic library. All of you will interface with your academic library. I know some of you are from academic libraries in your respective institutions. The slide we're looking at here is from a further education college, and it places information literacy right in the middle of a whole host of other, I suppose, digital elements. And it's the driver for this is e-safety, and that being safe online, and a real driver to educate the students of this particular college in that e-safety. And it starts with understanding information, understanding how to manage information, controlling things there like controlling personal information, evaluating your own posts, using information legally. This is driven by the library in that particular college. And again, with understanding information at the heart of e-safety, for me kind of speaks volumes as to how I suppose there's an obligation for libraries to be involved in supporting all things digital, and in this instance this is about digital safety. An illustration you've seen something similar already. We started out as with information and retrieval skills and with some critical evaluation. That was the job of the academic library, to provide that information literacy training. And this has morphed into an understanding of even more things digital, sophisticated reading list systems and referencing software, embedding electronic library resources and electronic library services into VLEs, use of social media, having library apps, having a portal, making sure that we use social media for communications about the library. And this is where I bring Ian Baird, my colleague at Teesside, back into it, because he spoke to me about that starting out at being good with computers was also being a librarian, understanding information literacy and understanding how, I suppose, network computer works, online information, digital information. And he says nowadays, being digital allows him to do so much more and allows it to support students and academics in quite different ways. He suggested to me he's the expert on their reading list software. He's an expert on altmetrics. He's advising academics around altmetrics. He's advising academics around predatory publishers. He's co-delivering workshops with their careers and employability department around digital reputation and online information, and he's doing training sessions via webinars. All things we wouldn't have been doing 10, 15 years ago as librarians, or as academic librarians, but all things now afforded to us by working together with our other partners within our institutions to deliver that digital capability or digital citizenship agenda. And finally, because I wanted to focus a little bit on digital literacy, my final thoughts are there is more to it than just digital literacy. So being an academic librarian, being a public librarian, being a health librarian, it's no longer about just supporting people find information and manage information. We need to put that into that much broader now digital citizenship concept. Now, we may not be aware, but as librarians and as library and information professionals, we do have an impact and we do have a responsibility. So from the school student engaging with a homework club in a public library, to the university student who suddenly understands how to search the electronic library resources for wider reading, to the patient who seamlessly reorders their repeat prescription online, to the senior citizen who's comfortable Skyping with their loved ones in another country, to the unemployed person discovering the job club back at the public library. That, for me, is the library's role in supporting digital citizenship. And thank you all for listening, and I think we've probably got a couple of minutes left for questions.
Thank you very much, Leo. That's very interesting. Anyone got any quick questions? Yeah, good luck.
You talk a lot about how libraries can sort of facilitate the skills and the access to information, but Eastern Movement, when they talk about the digital citizen, they think about it more as being a subject of power inside a state. So how can libraries therefore empower people to sort of be innovative with technology and go beyond just the skills?
So who sees it as a subject of power, sorry?
Eastern and Rupert in their book about digital citizenship,
Okay.
they see it more as being someone who's sat in a position of power on the inside state. So I think that, how do you
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, I think continue as we are, but I think for libraries in particular, it's moving away from being precious about it's simply about accessing information and searching for information, and it's taking that responsibility to ground that in the middle of that much wider, all the elements I've talked about, much wider digital citizenship platform. I've never really regarded it as an element of power, but I see what you mean about needing to empower people. That is the library's role. Now, whether that message gets out, I've obviously illustrated different types of library, hundreds of thousands of people involved in delivering those library services. These are my thoughts and observations.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I'll move on to the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.